Maybe in Spain, didn't quite happen, did it? Maybe in Spain happened, kind of, but not to the extent that we perhaps have expected. I think that, like, for some people, Spanish Grand Prix kind of delivered. For some people, the Spanish Grand Prix kind of disappointed, in terms of maybe their expectation. Not really speaking of the level of race and the entertainment we had, but on which side of the fence are you sitting on, Tonda? Because I'm kind of undecided.
I mean, I can see both. I can see both points, and why people would say so. I mean, especially after Monaco, everything seems more exciting.
True.
Yeah, but it wasn't the most exciting race, apart from the last 6 laps, which we'll talk about. But other than that, it was okay. I would say not too great, not too terrible. But I think one thing is clear, and that is that once again, just like last week, George Russell did not finish the race very happy.
Yeah.
After being Mario Karted by Max Verstappen in one of the last few laps, which I think is once again one of the biggest takeaways of the weekend. And we are back in Max Verstappen domestic terrorist era. Where, with Max on the hard tires in the sea of soft, just couldn't hold his ground and ended up having to, pull some questionable moves. But what do you think of that?
Yeah, definitely it kind of woke me up a little bit towards the end of the race, because seemed like it was an interesting race in terms of the strategy. I think, as you mentioned, Max Verstappen was on a 3-stop, right? Or, he was set out to be on a different strategy than the McLarens. Not sure if it was the 3-stop, but it definitely was a different strategy where he tried to put the pressure on the McLarens purely through the strategy, because they didn't seem to have the pace this weekend. So the technical directive, they didn't really change all that much. But, however, it was very weird seeing that happen, because, we had lap, I don't know, what was it, like 50, around lap 50, we had Antonelli retiring because of an engine issue, an engine failure, which is quite concerning for Mercedes, because that's yet another engine-related retirement.
In 3 races.
Yeah, and don't forget that last weekend we had, Monaco, where Alonso didn't finish due to engine problems. And that's a Mercedes power unit as well. So, yeah, that's looking quite concerning for Mercedes. Anyway, it was again a little bit exciting when we had the safety car. A lot of drivers, probably like all of the drivers, going on new softs, apart from Max Verstappen, who went on the hard compound tires, who everybody has been avoiding the whole weekend. So he really got to experience the full-on Ferrari strategy, before actually ever being in that team. But he almost lost the car in the restart. He had a tap with Leclerc, on the straight, which was, Verstappen was visibly upset about it, which was quite interesting, but seemed like the smallest of taps. But then the worst, or the biggest talking point happened. We had Max Verstappen, who got overtaken, or George Russell attempted to overtake Max Verstappen, and then Verstappen took the alternate route, and he kept the position. And later on, he absolutely terrorized George Russell. He actually used Russell's tactics right up till the turn. So he released the brakes, he added throttle, and then he crashed with Russell. Again, these two crashed. Again, both of these not happy. I don't know. What did you make of it? Like, how do you see this? How do you see this panning out? Because obviously Verstappen received a penalty for that, which resulted him in being P10. But at the same time, we've heard that Red Bull apparently made a mistake, because he shouldn't even have had to be giving back position to Russell, because there was no need. So they kind of screwed themselves, didn't they?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously you don't want to be in a position where you have to give back a position. Positions used twice in the same sentence. But just because you're not happy with the result doesn't mean that you can just ram into George Russell as he tries to take the corner, which I don't know if and Max did say for a day or two, right, that he didn't do anything wrong. Later he admitted some fault, I'm pretty sure, but
yeah,
it's just it's just another example of him getting quite heated in race, and that sometimes having he didn't take him out, right? But sometimes that has quite severe consequences with cars not finishing, some DNFs, and that very well could have happened here as well. I mean, yeah, he just did it wheel to wheel or tire to tire here at the bump, but George did report to have some damage, and you can't just ram people because you're upset. So it's pretty crazy. I mean, from Verstappen's side, I have to say, he really, once again, we've talked about this before, but he's, that once he doesn't have a car that performs well, he gets upset. Once he's not in a position to drive to the car's maximum, being on the hard tire, he gets upset, which is reasonable. But then, that prompts him sometimes to really pull some really, really wild moves that should not be pulled, by on the circuit.
Yeah, I agree completely. Like, it was unnecessary. I think Red Bull and Verstappen dropped the ball because otherwise they had a pretty good weekend, because Verstappen started in P3.
Yeah.
Immediately after the start, he went to P2, which was, a great position. I don't think he ever had the chance to really attack Piastri, because Piastri absolutely crushed this weekend, I'd say. Yeah. He couldn't defend Lando Norris because, the McLaren was clearly the faster car. But yeah, it seemed like it was a little bit unnecessary, with the way that, Verstappen was on the hard tires with, fresh tires, but still everybody around him had 2 steps softer compounds. And it looked like, from all the onboards, it looked almost like intentionally just ramming into him. He tried the Jeddah strategy that he had with Hamilton, kind of. Everybody has been calling Russell for the past few years Osama bin Russell, which, the Russell tactic has kind of flipped the turntables, this time. But, Russell was, to be fair to Russell, he was pretty calm. He didn't really, usually he takes quite an offense in these kinds of situations, especially with Verstappen. We've seen these two being quite upset with each other, right? And he's been pretty calm, I think. He said something along the lines as, I'm not going to comment on that, I think perhaps later on he said, I'm not going to comment because he's a 4-time world champion and a 0-time world champion. So apparently he does something right, which,
well,
I think, yeah.
And he, in one of the post-race interviews, he did say, I think George does like to make a speech every once in a while about Max and his dirty tactics. But the radio during, right after the incident was very funny because George was just like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Not even mad, but just really confused, as it makes sense.
Who wouldn't be?
You get a position given back and then suddenly you're being rammed into. And I mean, not a good, it was, I think, the least points scored for Red Bull since the double DNF in Bahrain 2022.
That's not great.
They scored, just 1 point. And
I've seen some statistics, right, saying that Hajar, for the past, I think for this race or VCarb or something like that he scored more points than the whole Red Bull did from the past 2 races, which is how? How is that possible?
Hajar, he's doing great.
He probably hopes that a certain Helmut Marko is not knocking on his door with the Red Bull upgrade, because, let's not forget the other driver in the Red Bull seat, who's Yuki Tsunoda. He qualified dead last, pretty much, on Saturday. They said that they made a mistake with too high, loaded wing, too much downforce. But come on, that can lose you a few tenths a lap. It won't lose you like 2 seconds or whatever he was missing, right? So seems like Tsunoda is not really performing, which nothing new for the second Red Bull seat. Nothing we haven't talked about yet. So I think many people are signing their apology letters to Sergio Perez for slamming him so hard, because now he looks like a freaking rock star.
We should too, probably. After last year's season, I think we spent quite a lot of the latter half of the episode of the season talking about Checo and shitting on him a bit. But actually, Yuki has been defended by both Helmut Marko and Christian Horner. So that's which is a feat to. It's quite a feat to make these two agree on something, right?
It's probably the Honda money that made them agree.
Yeah. But I mean, hopefully we see more of Yuki performing well. Hopefully his confidence doesn't suffer too much from this, because otherwise, I think there's still a lot of potential. There's still a long way to go in this season, unless he gets sacked in the middle of it, which would be a bit ridiculous, I think.
Like 3 drivers in a single season for one team, in one seat.
For one seat, yeah.
That would be, I don't remember that happening, like, in terms of, like, it being planned, Don't remember that happening for a while, but Tsunoda was also apparently running an older spec of the car since his crash in Imola. It's difficult to judge, but Spain is usually a performance indicator. Spain has been a testing track for a very long time. And one thing is that I think McLaren looked brilliant everywhere, including the straights and everywhere. Yeah. So it just proved that the flexi wings weren't the magic that was, behind the McLaren speed. It seemed like Mercedes did lose a little bit of their speed. And Toto Wolff before the weekend predicted that Ferrari will be the team that's going to gain the most. Which, when you look at qualifying, obviously I had a prediction that we will have a new podium goer this season, from somebody who has not been on the podium this season. And I was kind of hinting at Lewis Hamilton, right? Because Spain is usually a track where he's very good. And a fun statistic for you as well. Since 2016, I believe, nobody else other than Verstappen or Hamilton won the Spanish Grand Prix.
Really?
Now, Piastri is the only one. Yeah. It happened, I think in the year 2022, 3 and 4, Verstappen won. And all the years prior, except for 2016, where Verstappen won again, was Lewis Hamilton, pretty much. So, yeah, but then, so Hamilton qualified in P4 or in P5?
P5.
P5. Russell was P4, I think. So, he was putting it out there. He was saying that he aims for the podium because usually their race pace is better than their qualifying pace. And a certain Charles Leclerc was P7 after he had one run in Q3, running out of tires. Seemingly, having 2 medium tires for the race, the only one into top 10, I think, to do that. But then after lap 1, everything kind of changed, Hamilton did gain a position, but then Leclerc was right behind him. Leclerc's send on Russell in lap 1 was quite insane from my perspective. How did you enjoy the lap 1? Because, you're more of a Leclerc fan, right, than a Hamilton fan, so I think you must have kind of had a happy dance.
I mean, Leclerc being out-qualified by Hamilton, it's not something that we've seen a lot this year so far. So it was interesting to see that the dynamic reversed, but Leclerc was clear about not being too happy about racing in P7. So, that send on Russell was really something. And then, that was probably what kind of helped him get the podium later on, because he was free to go. And then I think there was the swap, right, with Hamilton as well later on.
Yeah, Hamilton didn't have any pace in the race, from lap 1, lap 2. Lap 1 he was attacking cars. He was quite close, but then he just dropped off like insanely.
Especially in the penultimate lap, where Lewis Hamilton was overtaken by Nico Hulkenberg in the Kick Sauber car. Meaning that Nico Hulkenberg finished in P5.
That's insane.
Sauber, which I don't think anybody would have predicted at the start of this weekend. But overall, so a very mixed bag, right, for Ferrari this weekend, because on one hand you have the podium with Charles Leclerc and some improvement over Red Bull and Mercedes, seemingly, and also importantly leapfrogging the two teams to get into P2 in the Constructors' Championship.
How did that happen? I don't know.
After, it doesn't feel like Ferrari should be P2, honestly. But,
no. This is like Mercedes in 2 years ago or 3 years ago. We were like how does Mercedes with a terrible dog of a car, get P2? And I think it's just maximizing the results, right? Except for China. But so you have kind of this, pretty good success. But on the other hand, you have again Lewis Hamilton being overtaken by a Kick Sauber car in the climax of the race, which that doesn't bode well for the race pace in the following races. Yeah, it was odd, but it seemed like the pace was missing only on the one side of the garage, because Hamilton was losing a lot of time, to Leclerc. After he overtook him, he was losing a lot of pace. Then Frederick Vasseur, he was saying something like that Lewis had an issue or damage with the car.
Yeah.
I don't know. It definitely seems like there was something wrong with the car, because you saw how Hamilton, he was, after, I don't know if you saw the post-race interviews, but he was completely broken. Yeah. He was saying, it's probably me. He was quite lost, and it seemed like, he's just getting deeper and deeper since last season with Mercedes. The struggle continues, but you just don't, I don't know. You just, I would understand if this happens in qualifying, if you lose maybe the ultimate pace, ultimate sharpness, But I don't think racecraft is something that you lose so considerably. It was Hamilton's strength.
Yeah.
Forever. He was he was better in the races than Russell last season or last seasons. We saw Las Vegas last season where he came from 10th to 2nd, and he was the quickest man, by not a small margin. And I don't think you lose that overnight. So there needs to be definitely something wrong with the car, because when you just looked at his onboards or everything, it just seemed like he was the one in the Kick Sauber and not Nico Hulkenberg, because it was quite a sight. Yeah.
Also, by the way, moved the team up the order, the constructors, thanks to this.
Yeah. That was quite, I they didn't show Hulkenberg that much, but just seeing him in that P6 spot, obviously before Verstappen got a penalty, was quite insane. And it seems like, the TD, the technical directive, kind of did a little bit more shuffle in the bottom field rather than it did in the top 4 teams, because it seemed like, whoever had the budget or whoever allocated their budget for the flexi wing in the bottom team has kind of suffered. And it seems like Sauber kind of pulled their stuff together and really managed to perform a miracle. Even Bortoleto having a great qualifying. So, yeah.
Fun fact about that, Bortoleto has so far this year qualified at a different position every single weekend.
Wow. I mean, towards the end of the season, he's going to run out of positions, but...
Yeah, well, P1 has to be, getting a pole at some point, probably then.
We need to do a forfeit if that happens, because I don't see that happening, but maybe in Spain.
Maybe in Spain. But we also saw Fernando Alonso finally scoring some points for Aston Martin after having one of his worst starts of the season in in his career.
Yeah, finally. I mean, that's been a long time coming, hasn't it? It was a weird weekend for Aston Martin.
Yeah.
Because you had only Fernando Alonso starting the Grand Prix, and you had Lance Stroll, who qualified very poorly. And it's been said that he has been fighting some pain with his wrists, and that he needs to, probably hinting at the broken wrists he had a few years back. However, there has been a lot of different conspiracy theories or different, maybe, let's say, inside information that it was not really just down to pure wrist pain. It seemed like he was very upset and fought with his team in the garage after qualifying. And seemingly he probably hit someone, or he hit something where it caused him pain in his wrists.
Oh.
And so it didn't seem like it was there purely because of his wrists after quali started hurting. Seemed like he genuinely had a disagreement with his team.
Interesting.
Did you not hear about that? Okay.
I have
That's
not.
interesting.
I have not.
So that is the theory, that he had a disagreement with his team. He might have hit something, with his fists or something, like a closet or whatever. I have no idea what. And then, it caused him pain, and he didn't race, which was quite a shaft for Aston, because they couldn't put anybody else in the seat since he already was in the qualifying and he did qualifying session with it. So no Felipe Drugovich or anybody else, but now it begs the question, will we see Lance Stroll in Canada in his home Grand Prix?
Which Felipe Drugovich did say that he will prioritize over the 24-hour of Le Mans, which is kind of crazy, if you ask me.
Definitely.
Running, losing the chance to compete in a race like Le Mans, for the chance to run in P20. No, probably not. Well, I mean, I get it. It's F1, and we did see in the past cases of reserve drivers later getting a proper chance, like in the case of Nick de Vries, if you still remember who that was.
Yeah, well, the story never died of Nick de Vries. I mean,
yeah, there's always one. But There was also, I saw a different conspiracy theory, and that was that Max Verstappen actually tried to get a race ban by ramming into George Russell.
So he can go to Le Mans.
So he can go to Le Mans instead of Felipe Drugovich. Only missing out by one penalty point, because maybe he should have taken him out fully and then he could have gone. But do you think that Max Verstappen will get a race ban before the race of the end of the season?
That's an interesting question, because I don't know, like, one part of the question would be, do we think that Verstappen can get the 12 penalty points? And I think he can. His driving style kind of suits, or kind of goes towards that. But the other question is, if he gets to 12 penalty points, do you really think that the FIA is going to ban him for the race? Because just imagine the headlines. Like, who the hell would go into that Red Bull? Like, I'm thinking that like people would actually avoid the seat. But
but also it would really be something. Reigning world champion banned because of his reckless driving. It would, and this has also sparked a very big discussion on Twitter, at least, about is this the championship? Is this the world champion mindset? Is he just the new Michael Schumacher or Ayrton Senna who did similar things, or is this a sign of a weak driver who cannot, race wheel to wheel without taking the other person out? Both quite extreme points of view, but yeah, a lot of competing opinions. But what's your stance in all of this? Is it should racing always be clean only, or should there be space for drivers to take their elbows out? And
well, I think there are always two sides to the coin, but Nico Rosberg, the 2016 F1 World Champion, who beat Lewis Hamilton in the equal machinery, by the way. Or did he? But he was saying that Max Verstappen should have been black flagged, which that's quite a statement, because black flag is essentially I haven't seen a black flag for a long time, that's been for something you have done like aggressively or unintentionally. Last black flag, funnily enough, we've seen last season, right, with Hulkenberg in Brazil, where he got pushed out from when he got stuck. But, saying get black flag is quite a strong statement. But I also have heard a brilliant podcast with Damon Hill. He is the 1996 world champion for Williams, racing Michael Schumacher, who I believe kinda had a... I think the comparison can be made with Verstappen because they both just had no limits to what they were going to do in order to win. We have seen Schumacher completely ramming off Damon Hill in 94 to secure the world championship. We have seen him attempt a similar move in 97 against Villeneuve, but then he got disqualified from the whole championship in the last round, let's not forget. Even though he damaged his car so much, he retired from the race and Villeneuve became champion. So, and Damon Hill was saying that racing shouldn't be about forcing drivers off the track. And it shouldn't be about like who owns the corner and therefore you turn in like nobody's there. So I'm kind of, yes, I want to see hard racing. I want to see drivers getting their elbows out. But at the same time, I just don't want to see drivers, sending it down the inside, being 10 centimeters more ahead on the inside of the corner, taking the privilege to just run the other driver off the road. I think you're just basically kind of working around the rules. So, yeah, I think what Verstappen did today was over the line for me, and even to his credit, he did say pretty much that he did not do this. He would probably not do it again, and he's not happy with the move. But yeah, that would be my take. What about you?
I also I'm on the edge with this because obviously there have to be limits to things like this, and it shouldn't be normalized. It should be the thing that happens every race, every time two drivers battle wheel to wheel, that they just take each other out, or as you say, just whoever is at the apex first gets to do whatever they want. So I agree with you. It's a very fine line between having really tough battles, hard racing, and ethical wheel as they're calling it on Twitter nowadays without crashing. But just and then being openly aggressive with the car and not driving fair, basically. So of course not you can't just seat position every time somebody appears in your rear view mirrors, but
exactly,
you can't be ramming them all day long.
That is true. And but to maybe answer the second kind of question you had, right? Or the second part, to an extent, it does build a different aura about Max Verstappen. Now comparing it a little bit to Senna, because he had everybody knew that you either give him the space or you're going to crash.
Yeah.
So whether it's bad or not, I think I'll leave that to a personal interpretation of what they want to see. But, probably there is something into it. In the end, he won 4 world championships. And had it not been for this approach, he probably would not have won in 2021. So, as much as I don't really like his over-aggressive side, we have to hand it to him that he really... It does create something around him, So Yeah, definitely is. There is something about it. So, yeah. Now, diving into our predictions, Tonda, will you be so nice to say your prediction for the Spanish GP, because I'm ready for it. I'm ready for your explanation.
Yes, you are very correct. My prediction did not go so well, as I did predict that we would not see a McLaren car on the podium in Spain. I don't know what I was expecting. I don't know what I was hoping for with the new technical directive, or what I thought would happen in the McLaren garage, but clearly it did not. And we saw a double podium for them, making my prediction totally off base. But you can't blame me for having hope for the rest of the season. This McLaren dominance, which is a horrible sentence to say. But so a total failure on my part. But what was your bold prediction?
Well, my prediction was also not happening. It was not realized with its full potential. So I predicted that we will have somebody new on the podium for this season who hasn't been on the podium this season so far. But Charles Leclerc, he was been on the podium once, and now he has been twice. Which I didn't predict. I didn't expect Leclerc to be on the podium, but it still did not fulfill my prediction, unfortunately. And yeah. Seems like our streak is really non-existent, but let's try and predict. What is your prediction for the Canadian Grand Prix?
Red flag.
Wow.
Just.
You want the point, don't you?
I'm gonna just. No, you don't have to be. We don't have to beat around the bush. Just. I'm done with my mild predictions that lead nowhere and are always wrong. So I'm gonna just say red flag, and I'm not that I would be praying for, somebody to be in harm's way, crash, but I just think that for one reason or the other, we'll see a red flag, and then hopefully an exciting restart and maybe a shuffle in the order that the cars are.
Somebody has really liked Canada 2011. Okay, well, my prediction is that one of the Mercedes, will end up on the front row for the qualifying, because Mercedes is usually pretty strong in Canada. It's a relatively good track for them. I think you need a pretty good balance with the car, and I think that Mercedes car is the one with probably the most stable balance out of the top teams, maybe discounting McLaren a little bit, and George Russell has been superb in qualifying ever since he came into F1. So that is my prediction, and I hope it does come true. Last year, in the end, I think he was on pole, right? So we'll see. But getting back to Spain, who would you say was your driver of the weekend? Because let's not forget, Williams were counting in the top 5 and they had a disaster. So I don't expect you to be really putting either of those names in there. So who is your driver of the weekend?
No, it's really difficult this weekend. Obviously, there we have the McLarens. We have Oscar Piastri as, again, dominating another weekend, getting his 5th win this season, and being only one race win away from equaling Charles Leclerc's number of wins. So
that's
Piastri is quite an obvious choice, but I also think that if we're saying driver of the weekend, I think Piastri is one of the more obvious choices. But of the race, I think Charles Leclerc, really did not do too bad for himself either, with the overtake on Russell, and then just kind of getting into the podium. And then he did what he had to. He did things right. I mean, obviously you might say, okay, he just kind of benefited from all the chaos going on around him. But it's also something you have to make work in your favor. And luck favors the bold. Fortune favors the bold.
True. Very true. Well, for me, also as you mentioned, I think Leclerc is an interesting choice for the driver of the weekend. So I'm going for Charles Leclerc because, it's Oscar Piastri. I think he has done an exceptional job this weekend. I think he would also be, for me, a driver of the weekend. But yeah, it's difficult, with these races. You really don't know the real potential the car has. So you don't know who utilizes the maximum. But just for the moves that Leclerc has been pulling off, I think he deserves the driver of the weekend, for the race mainly. So yeah, a podium for Ferrari, only the second one this season. Why not? I think we're going to agree on the bottom field driver of the weekend, because for me, that is Nico Hülkenberg, and I expect you to say the same, because...
there's no... Yeah. I mean, as much as we love Isaac Hadjar, and he did finish quite high again, I think this weekend, there's no discussion. There's no discussion to be had about this. Finishing P5 in that tractor of a car automatically puts you on the Final Straight F1 podcast top driver from the bottom field position.
Started from the bottom, now we're here.
You said it.
Yeah. A brilliant drive. There's nothing to add. Overtaking a Ferrari on pretty much equal tires. I mean, is it more a happy thing for the Kick-Sauber or more of a sad thing for Ferrari? I don't know.
We'll see. Let you decide, we'll see in Canada.
We'll see in Canada, exactly. That is going to be the theme from now on. Anyways, your biggest winner or winners of the Spanish GP?
I think I just have to go out and say McLaren. McLaren, I think a lot of people will. Maybe not, coming into the practice, but because people already saw that they didn't bring any changes, basically, that their front wing was already tested a few races ago. And so I don't think that people really expected a drastic change in the pecking order. But still, McLaren, there were some who believed that the DD would really slow them down a bit. So the fact that they managed to avoid that and have another dominant weekend with a double podium really goes to show that they, unless something insane happens, they just have this season, they're basically done. And they know they can be pretty sure that, for sure they're walking home with the Constructors' Championship again. And very, very, very likely that one Drivers' Championship as well. Unless Max Verstappen pulls out something crazy, which, as he showed he can, then we're seeing a title battle between two teammates. Again, finally.
Yeah, well, I mean, at least we're seeing a title battle, right? Yeah. It's 10 points right now between the two teammates, which, it's a small margin, but at the same time, it is pretty exciting because, Piastri has been on quite a form, and Lando Norris has, even though he has maximized probably whatever he could do, he was just not fast enough. But yeah, for my biggest winner, I would also go for McLaren. But since you already said that, I'm also going to go with a different direction, and I'm going to say the V-Carbs. And Isaac Hadjar in particular, because they are now the 6th team in the constructor standings, which that's quite insane. And I remember the last time this was happening, because the only teams that are in front of them are basically the works teams, right? It's the Ferrari, it's the Red Bull, it's the McLaren, the Mercedes, and the Williams, But they have overtaken Haas now. So
yeah,
being in P6, where I think you predicted them to be like, P9 in the championship, maybe I did as well. They have had, and it's a great sign for them, because Spain is really one of the ultimate test tracks for cars' performance. And, it seems like Hadjar and the V-Carb has been pretty solid. So it just goes to show that they'll probably be able to replicate these results for the rest of the season, which I think that's quite admirable.
Yeah. Also, I would like to mention that I also predicted Williams in P5 back when it was a ridiculous thing to say, and now look where we are.
Well, good on you, Tonda. We'll see in the midway of the season.
Very true. Still a long way to go. Maybe V-Carb will push even further. Because I will actually say that for me, the biggest losers of the weekend were the Williams team. Because it just, after being the clear fifth, and racking up points, Alex Albon having more points in the first few races than he had 2023 and 2024 combined. It seemed like they were on a really nice track, but now, not working out so well for them.
Yeah. I mean, you're stealing my thoughts right from my brain, Tonda, because I was about to say the similar thing. Yeah. I mean, I'd agree. But at the same time, I think that arguably could be also the biggest loser, could be Max Verstappen, because he lost a load of points. And, last year we pretty much praised him for being actually, whenever the car wasn't there, he was. And on Sunday, he pretty much lost, 10 points easily. He maybe lost a podium. I mean, it depends how you look at it, but probably he lost a P4, And Red Bull kind of helped that, but he lost a load of points where it counts, And if Red Bull is to come with an upgrade that's going to put them on par with McLaren, we will be probably looking back at Spain and saying that this is the place where he might have lost the championship. But, he said it himself. He doesn't consider himself to be in the fight. He just considers himself to participate in the championship. So maybe in Canada.
Maybe in Canada. And maybe in Canada, but before we get to Canada, we do have to rank this race out of 10. And I'm not going to start this time because clearly my ranking scale is skewed, having given 6 points to Monaco last weekend, which looking back now, is quite egregious. So what would you say? How would you rank the Spanish Grand Prix?
Drunk Tonda would probably rate this a 9.5, but no, I mean, realistically, looking at the race, trying not to really apply the recency bias, because, whenever you have, especially since it's a part and the ender of a triple header, Spain was now, after Monaco, I think I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10, because we did have an exciting lap 1. We had some overtakes, we did have some interesting strategy. We had Red Bull going for a different one. We had a safety car that kind of shuffled the order a little bit, made some more overtakes. We had the drama with Verstappen, but overall, it has not been the most exciting of races. Hence, I'm giving it a 5 out of 10, trying really hard not to have the recency bias. What about you, Tonda?
I think I can agree. Maybe even less.
Wow.
No.
Tonda is compensating really hard.
Yeah, I am. No, 5, it was very middle of the road. Kind of the races where we were used to just, maybe something exciting at the start and in the end, but in the middle, you're just kind of watching paint dry. But hopefully, Canada will bring more excitement. Well, I did predict a red flag, but we'll see about that. So,
yeah, well, I think we'll see in Canada once again. And there was also a little bit of weirdness in Spain around Liam Lawson and the overtaking. I think it was with Ollie Berman quite a bit.
Oh yeah,
that was quite a frequent sight at the TV. So yeah, well, wishing for more tracks with gravel so that we're not utilizing these escape road shortcuts. Yeah. But maybe in Canada, we'll see. But there are also quite a few shortcuts. But thank you anyways for tuning in, and we'll see you in Canada.
And if you're driving tonight, stay safe, because Max Verstappen is out there. See you in Canada.
See you in Canada.